What has a Tinder-like dating culture led to in our communities? What is destroying marriages in the modern era? And how does this affect our children's upbringings? Let's talk about this and more in today's episode of Adams Athenaeum. Thanks for coming back to listen to this episode where we're going to talk about the growing popularity of bad marriages, parenting, and upbringings. Just to kind of highlight what we're going to talk about over this episode, I've got some bullet points here. A few of the things we're going to talk about are less marriages are taking place, which leads to a lack of children being born into two-parent households. This has led to 3 times the number of single mothers since the 60s. The effects on children from the types of upbringing. Fatherless homes tend to lead children to a higher chance of incarceration, thus creating a repetitive cycle of fatherless homes. We're going to talk about the effects of microplastics on testosterone levels in babies. And we're going to have a summary of how less marriage, less children, and a rise in crime will lead to lower future population counts. And we're going to tie that in with overpopulation concerns and how Jordan Peterson thinks the world will top off at about 9 billion people, then drastically drop. Again, I appreciate you coming back for this episode. Let's go ahead and get started by pulling up our first referencing article here. We got from, let me make sure I've got it all so we can see it. This first article is going to be from the United States Census Bureau. So, should be fairly reasonable and consistent information. Let me make sure I got it pulled up for everyone here to check out. We should be good. From the United States Census Bureau, U.S. marriage and divorce rates declined in the last 10 years. Now, this was written December 7th of 2020, so forgive me for not having the most up-to-date information. But it says both marriage and divorce rates in the United States declined from 2009 to 2019, but rates vary from state to state. In 2019, there was roughly 16 new marriages for every 1,000 women aged 15 and over in the United States, which was down from about 17.5 in 2009. At the same time, the U.S. divorce rate fell from 9.7 new divorces per 1,000 women aged 15 and over in 2009 to 7.6 in 2019. So what can we take from that? There seems to be less marriages, thus there's less divorces. Again, correlation may not equal causation, but it would seem that if there's less marriages happening, that there's less chance of a divorce taking place at some point in the future, right? So then I had another question. Let's pull up this next article here from thewealthysinglemommy.com. Again, let's go ahead and get this up so everyone can see it. Says single mother statistics for 2022. Surprising facts about single moms. And we're just going to kind of scroll through a little bit, get some statistics here. Says there were 15.6 million single mother-headed households in the United States in 2019. This is 3 times the number than in 1960. And in addition, 25% of U.S. families are headed by a single parent, and 80% of single parent-headed households are moms. Or 21% of U.S. children live primarily with a single mother, according to census data. Studies estimate that by the time children turn 9, 20% of U.S. children born to a married couple and more than 50% of those born to a cohabiting couple will experience the breakup of their folks. 40% of babies born in the United States were born to an unmarried mom in 2018, according to census data. So from 2018, at least in 2018, it sounds like almost half of the babies born were to single mothers. So I ask, how does that affect the well-being of the children as they're being raised? So that's going to bring us to this next article by Psychology Today. And here they talk about the single-parent family. And it says, not that we're going to actually use this article as truth, but I want you to see what a psychology website says. They say, single parents should be reassured by the fact that a large number of studies find no differences between the children of single mothers and children from other types of households. The study looked into the lives of children from different kinds of households, 2-parent biological, adoptive, stepfather, stepmother, single parent, and the type of household did not matter, they say. Now, I'm not going to read you the rest of this because it's horse crap. It's baloney. It's not true, right? We're going to pull up another article here that disproves that. And this is from Maripedia.org. Let's make sure that the screens transfer here because this one's important. Effects of parents on crime rates. Number 1, the role of fathers. The absence of the father is the single most important cause of crime. That basically disputes everything about that last article. In fact, boys who are fatherless from birth are 3 times as likely to go to jail as peers from intact families, while boys whose fathers do not leave until they're 10 to 14 years old are 2 times as likely to go to jail as their peers from intact families. Children without a father are more than twice as likely to be arrested for a juvenile crime and are 3 times more likely to go to jail by the time they reach age 30 than are children raised by intact families. So this completely disproves that other narrative written by Psychology Today, that no matter what type of household upbringing you have, your children's going to be okay. That's wrong. Your child will fall into a life of crime, most likely, if it's a single parent household. Now, there's not enough data to prove whether, a 2-parent household of the same gender or of separate genders makes a difference. But there's obvious effects of maternal and paternal instincts when raising children and the effects they have on the child as they grow. Down here, role of mothers. The early experience of intense maternal affection is the basis for the development of a conscience and moral compassion for others. I'm going to skip ahead. If a child's emotional attachment to their mother is disrupted during the first few years, permanent harm can be done to the child's capacity for emotional attachment to others. The child will be less able to trust others, and throughout his or her life will stay more distant emotionally from others. Having many caretakers during the first few years can lead to a loss of this sense of attachment for life and to antisocial behavior. Separation from the mother, especially between 6 months and 3 years of age, can lead to long-lasting negative effects on behavior and emotional development. Mothers and fathers are critically important in the well-being and development of a child. So I would ask, should we have some kind of IQ test before you decide to sleep with somebody? Because we all know if you sleep with somebody, there is a chance of you getting pregnant. I don't care what contraceptive actions you took. There is a chance that you will get pregnant. That is what you are agreeing to every time you have sex. You're agreeing that as an adult, I understand that my actions may lead to a baby in the future. Now, a lot of you will hear about fatherless homes and the effects that this is having. So this next article I want to take us to is from the National Fatherhood Initiative. Again, give me just a second to get the screen pulled up for everybody. Sorry if I'm messing with my face a little bit. I just trimmed up all my beard hair. If you've noticed from the last few episodes, my face feels a little different. So I apologize if I'm kind of fidgety over here. Anyway, National Fatherhood Initiative says the statistics don't lie, fathers matter. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 18.4 million children, or 1 in 4, live without a biological, step, or adoptive father in the home. That's enough children to fill New York City twice or Los Angeles 4 times over. And they have some infographics, which I'm going to go ahead and pull up for you as well to make sure that we can actually read what all it says. Give me just a second here. Got lots of clicking to do. Give me just a second. The strengths of father presence. They are at lower risk for a host of poor childhood outcomes, such as infant mortality, low birth rate, emotional and behavioral problems, neglect and abuse, injury and obesity, or poor school performance. How about teen pregnancy or incarceration as juveniles, or alcohol and substance abuse, criminal activity, or even suicide? Let's go ahead and pull up another one of the infographics just to get a little more clarification on the absence, the effects of absent fathers. Research shows when a child is raised in a father-absent home, they are affected in the following ways: 4 times greater risk of poverty, more likely to have behavioral problems. We got 2 times greater risk of infant mortality, more likely to go to prison, more likely to commit crime, 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen, more likely to face abuse and neglect, more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, twice as likely to suffer obesity, twice as likely to drop out of school. These are long-term studies. There are effects to how you raise your children. Something we're slowly learning about that's hard to find to some degree. If you're trying to find a real truthful article of actual scientists and doctors talking about this. But I first learned about this from Joe Rogan and a guest he had on talking about microplastics in our youth. And I found this article today from healthline.com. Let's go ahead and check this one out together. We've got, again, healthline.com, degrading plastics turn into microplastics. A report published, well, let's see. This was written June 13th, 2019. So again, forgive me for the late date here, but according to that time frame, a report published about that week by the World Wildlife Fund from research done by the University of Newcastle, Australia, looked at data from 52 studies on microplastic ingestion. Researchers found that people are at risk for ingesting around 5 grams of plastic per week. That's equivalent to a credit card. And some studies have suggested it depends on your diet as to how much microplastics you're ingesting and whether or not you're actually eating a credit card a week, a month, or a year, whatever. It's up for debate. We're here to learn a little bit, right? Anyway, let's skip just a little bit ahead. People who rely on bottled water might be ingesting 90,000 more microplastic particles per year on average than those who drink only tap water, the authors warn. Let's go ahead and skip a little bit further. As actual consumption might be higher. Again, kind of depends what you're eating, what you're drinking. Microplastics found in stool. These studies contribute to a growing body of evidence on microplastic exposure. For a previous study, researchers from the Medical University of Vienna and the Environment Agency Austria tested stool samples from people in 8 countries around the world. They found microplastic particles in every sample. Now, they accumulate in the environments, but what is the effect of these? Well, microplastics, or phthalates, disrupt hormonal activity. Even in cases when the basic building blocks of plastic themselves pose little to no risk to human health, potentially harmful chemicals are often added to plastics to modify their appearance or functionality. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit here again. And the effects of this are, and what happens is that the development of the male genitals is completely masculinized, she said. For example, her research suggests that male fetuses with higher levels of phthalate exposure are more likely to be born with testes that haven't fully descended and small penises. They also tongue-tied. They also tend to have a shorter than average distance between their anus and their genitals, or their taint. This has been linked to increased risk of infertility later in life. Wow. Who would have thought that your diet could affect so much? So then that leads me to, I guess, one final question. Because the likes of Bill Gates would tell us that we all need to adjust our diet and the world is suffering due to overpopulation and, we just have to do something. We have to fix the overpopulation and world hunger. So what are we going to do? Well, let's take a real hard, just ponder about this for a second. This article from todayinbc.com says, Morning Start, did you know the entire world's population could fit inside Los Angeles? Yes, this is true. It's verified by several different studies. It all depends on You can look this up on Google. They use different states or territories or countries or whatever to kind of give you a rough estimate of the size of everybody in the world were to stand shoulder to shoulder. How many people could you fit in one space? Now, obviously, fitting 7.5 billion people into Los Angeles, shoulder to shoulder, there's nowhere to move, live, eat, breathe. I get that. But let's think about it in perspective. The world's total population is more than 7.5 billion, which obviously sounds massive, they say. They continue. However, it might feel a little more manageable once you learn that if every single one of those people stood shoulder to shoulder, they could all fit within the 500 square miles of Los Angeles, according to National Geographic. So is it really overpopulated, or are we just overpopulating major cities and not diversifying where we live and utilizing our resources to sustain the entire human population? Perhaps is one reason that there's world hunger, is it because some people live so freaking far away from everything? This was a joke told many years ago on late night comedy about, we could end world hunger right now if you people didn't live so freaking far away. We're driving vans every day to and from the cities, bringing people food and doing deliveries, but you're out there 500 miles away from the city. If you moved closer to the city, you wouldn't be hungry. You're living in a freaking desert. Of course, there's no food in a desert. Obviously, not everyone in the world that's starving lives in a desert, right? They live everywhere. But I think there's some truth to that. We could end world hunger in a day. If billionaires donated X amount of money, we could give everyone food. It's possible. Same with, we could bring everyone together, and there's still a vast amount of this earth that would be unclaimed and unexplored still. We talk about overpopulation and how we need to control humans reproducing. Yet I argue with Bill Gates, if everyone can fit into one state, let alone one country, let alone one continent. Think about that. If we did that, there would be 6 empty continents with nothing, no humans whatsoever, no human activity. That'd be a very interesting social and scientific experiment for sure, to see the effects that Mother Nature would take over, right? But anyway, I'm getting a little away from the topic of today's talk. Essentially, today's episode came about because, again, I've been listening to a lot of just pearly things on YouTube and some similar channels that YouTube likes to promote to me, as well as some things I've heard on just other news channels or maybe even like Joe Rogan highlights that I've heard of, is that marriages aren't doing as strong as they used to be. I think OnlyFans has something to do with that. I think porn has something to do with that. I think there should be conversations about the effects of cheating and the meaning of cheating between men and women. I don't have a stance on this yet, but I've heard it recently, and I'd like to know your opinions on it down in the comments section. Let's kind of figure this one out together, how we all feel about it. It was somewhat in line of, you shouldn't have kids if you don't understand what being a parent means. Yeah, I lost it. Sorry about that. Trying to do these live episodes and keep your train of thought. Sometimes you just lose something when you're trying to talk fast. I'm curious, the effects of our current social media culture, the accessibility to porn, how women are shown in music videos, TV shows, movies, the likes, artwork. Does that have an effect on relationships? Why aren't men staying with women? Why aren't women staying with men? Again, from just Pearly things, she points out that, well, over 80% of women, sometimes up to 95% of women, will only basically only like about 5% of men on average. Think about that. The vast majority of women think that only the top 5 to 10% of guys are good looking, dateable, husband material, or what they want. So 80% of women are all fighting for the same 5% of guys. And then when they get those 5% of guys, they hate them. They talk about how bad men are and toxic masculinity, not understanding what it takes to be a real man. To be a real man and have your own business, have your own toys like yachts, whatever, to have your own estate, your own personal finances squared away, perhaps a family, you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice so much and receive very little praise, very little thanks. You can spend your entire life working to attain that point. And a girl in her 20s just slides into your DMs, and the story is written from there. That does not lead to long-term relationships. Women want 5% of guys, but those guys are they have the traits that women complain about the most. Hardworking, work obsessive, they don't give enough attention to women because they're too devoted to their work. Have we truly thought about what it means to be in a relationship? The sacrifice it takes. With marriage, it is a sacrifice for the woman to give up her last name and take on the man's last name. That is a sacrifice. In today's day and age, it's not even an argument or debate. It's just a question that the woman asks herself, am I going to hyphenate my last name or keep my last name? It's almost not even a thought of, am I going to take my husband's name? Women, because of OnlyFans, many have become hoes. And they think that's a great lifestyle to live up to sleep with as many men as you can while you're still young and you still got it. There's just one problem, ladies, and this comes from a man. Once your body count is X amount high, you're disgusting to me. I don't want to sleep with you. I don't want to have children with you. I don't want to touch you in a personal, intimate way. You've been with more people than I see as befitting. You are not, in my opinion, you are not entirely one piece or a whole version of yourself anymore. And this effect is shown to some degree in divorce studies. Women who have more than one sexual partner tend to lead to a divorce. I think the statistic is like women who have slept with 2 partners specifically are more likely to engage in a divorce later on. It's essentially like, I may not have this theory perfect, but essentially, if you're a virgin, you don't really need to know what else is out there. You don't have anything else to compare to. This was your first, only, and potentially last experience with someone, right? But men aren't getting that anymore. And now women who have slept with hundreds of people, thousands of people, think that they hold value to a man because they're young. You may be pretty, but in 10 years, it's kind of like in Game of Thrones. Everything starts to not stay put, if you know what I mean. Fatherless homes and jails and criminality. It's a revolving door. It's a repetitive cycle. Not having a father in the home leads to higher chances of criminality in kids, which then leaves them for the potential of not being there for their kids, which then leaves the potential for their kids to have a higher chance to be incarcerated. It just continues. You have to break that cycle. Just like graduating high school. You have to break that cycle. Be the first one in your family to do it. We can have a separate debate about college and whether that's worth it, but let's try to wrap this up, stay on point. It may be a little too authoritarian to say that people should have to take an IQ test before they have children. Perhaps it's too much to say that you need to take some kind of serious 2-year course with some kind of institution before you get married to see if you qualify for marriage. If you really mean it, if you truly understand it. Because the effects of a good, lasting marriage matter not only to you, to your peers, to your personal life, your work life, but to the children that hopefully you'll bring into this world. And that's where I'll leave today's episode. A reminder that if you want to be a parent, that's a great thing. I encourage you to be one. Please make sure that you're ready for it. There's so much to know and understand just psychologically about things that your child needs to be prepared for before they're even 3 years of age. There's so many experiences that you have to teach your child before they're even 2 years old to establish a good fundamental basis for maturational development. There's things we all need to know and to learn. And it's all out there on the internet for us. I'm here to highlight some of this and bring it to you. And I realize in some of my last episodes, I've been a bit too bitchy and I've sounded as though I'm yelling at you, the person. And I apologize for that. That's not how I have ever intended my episodes to come across. I do intend to bitch. And I do intend to give strong, hard-worded advice to people. But when I say you, I apologize for that. That's bad wording. Generally, in my political videos, I'm talking to the far-left lunatic Democrats. Or in videos like this, if I say you, I'm talking to the feminists, the new age feminists, and who would scream about toxic masculinity and how they don't need a man to raise their kid and being a single mother is great for your kid. And they would espouse stuff like that Psychology Today article. I'm here to try to bring light and truth to the facts and to share them with you so that you may be encouraged to find the whole truth for yourself and then make your own opinions on it. So I appreciate you coming back for this episode and staying with this channel. As, at least in my opinion, looking back, it's been a somewhat long with slightly bumpy hiccups along the way. And I appreciate you for sticking with me. All 18 of you. It may sound like a small audience to some, but the 18 of you have helped to give me insight as to what you would like to hear, what I need to work on, what I should, or maybe how I should talk about things or present things. And I thank you for that. This is a team effort. I can't do this without your help. And, well, all I can do is help bring stuff to you, right? Now, again, in efforts to wrap this up, you can find me here at Rumble, Twitter, Locals, or on YouTube at Adams Athenaeum. I post weekly, sometimes more, if I can find the time in the week to do that with my work schedule. And if there's anyone in your life that you know that needs to hear this message or something like it, please feel free to share this message to any and all of your friends. I will see you again soon. And again, thanks for coming.